What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Enough is enough. It's not every day you hear a sitting vice president openly declare that one side is, quote-unquote, asking for way too much. Yet that was precisely what JD Vance laid down at the Munich leaders meeting in Washington. And yes, we are obviously talking about Russia's demands towards Ukraine that they presented as mandatory things to fulfill before Putin even considers ending war. Picture the Grand Hall, famed for its history of being closed-doors deals and solemn handshakes, and now humming with the tension of the world on the edge. Delegates in crisp suits, whispering over clinking coffee cups, wondering whether Russia's latest demands were a genuine negotiating position, or simply another gambit in its campaign of coercion. But behind those polite nods and half smiles, a stark reality emerged. Russia has positioned itself to extort concessions far beyond any reasonable offer of peace, demanding land, security guarantees, and immunity from war crimes prosecution as the price of halting its own siege. One question though, why would you ask for the immunity if you think your deeds are the righteous ones? That's a very interesting question, probably for another video. So yeah, Americans recall all too well the 30 days ceasefire proposal that Moscow fully rejected, dismissing it as a ploy that would let Ukraine catch its own breath and regroup, as if Russia wouldn't do exactly the same.
It's making the president's attempt to try to settle things look like we're on the right path, but in the reality, are we even really close?
I don't think we're close, right? And I think President Trump wants this to look good, right? I think he wants to be seen as a deal maker, wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize or something like that.
Now, as the United States shifts its focus towards crafting a durable settlement, one that cements Ukraine's sovereignty and security, Putin doubles down on his maximalistic posture. And so here is the dilemma. What do you do when one negotiating partner treats concessions as an auction, leaving the other scrambling to keep pace with the ever-growing list of demands? How to satisfy both leaders at the same time, while not ignoring the most desired wishes of the other one? I guess that came out wrong, but anyways. The administration that supposedly wants to be in control of everything now feels like that they are being fooled around and played around like a naive kid. So no wonder they lost temper and started making pretty undiplomatic statements. Let's talk about all of this in today's video. At the heart of JD Vance's critique lays a simple observation. Russia's list of prerequisites is not just a foundation for compromise. It is, well, at this point, a shopping spree. Imagine walking into negotiations only to find the other side waving a list of demands that reads like a conquest checklist. Formal recognition of Crimea's annexation, permanent Russian dominion over Luhansk and Donetsk regions, creation of demilitarized buffer carved from Ukrainian territory, assurances that Kiev will never approach NATO's doorstep, and immunity from any future crimes investigations. It's like if a thief stood at your doorstep, demanding not just your wallet, but your house keys, your car title, and the deed to your family farm, before even considering a conversation. Well, yes. From the Kremlin's perspective, let's assume it's a logical one. Every kilometer of Ukrainian land taken by force becomes sacred collateral. But this is not some kind of a board game of empire building. It is a brutal campaign of destruction that leaves villages in ashes and families on the run. JD Vance's point was unambiguous. The US cannot sign on to a blueprint that rewards aggression and rewrites borders by force. This, absolutely makes sense, right? But unfortunately, this is yet another thing that Putin wants. On Russian state TV channels, the message will be loud and clear. Russia proposed peace. America, along with Ukraine, refused. Well, I guess let's keep fighting then if this is what they want. Now consider the human toll that will follow with these impossible demands. If the eastern reaches of Ukraine, towns lie half collapsed, their schools shattered, and churches riddled with shrapnel, well, in Kherson, farmers they watch helplessly as spring planting seasons lapse into memories, fields mined and roads impassable, and then displaced mother wander across European borders, clutching children too young to understand why their homes no longer stand. And so then behind every line item on Russia's shopping list is a human life shattered by artillery barrages and sniper fire. And yet, Putin treats these tragedies as mere consequences, as if they don't even matter at all. He says kinda, it happened, what you gonna do about it? JD Vance's impatience flickered not only at the abstract audacity of the demands, but the attempt to betray the very basic human dignity. This is not Washington posturing for television cameras. It reflects a deeper shift in American strategy, moving beyond tactical poses towards a long-term resolution that binds Russia to enforceable commitments. Rather than chasing ephemeral ceasefires that stall only to collapse, the US seeks guarantees, legal frameworks, multinational monitoring missions, benchmarks for reconstruction, and then consequences for breaking the potential truce. Much better and, allow me to say it, mature, I guess, way of thinking about this conflict, rather than just saying, I'm going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. It's one of the first steps in a long road towards peace, but it is a step nevertheless. And most importantly, the Trump's administration finally started seeing the true colors of Putin. We spoke about JD Vance, now let's talk about what Donald Trump has to say about all of this. Behind the pointed critiques lies a parallel drama unfolding in the president's own diplomatic playbook. Donald Trump, never one to shy away from grand pronouncements, has now danced a delicate tango between threats and appeasement. Only weeks ago he wrote on Truth Social that Vladimir Putin looks like playing with me around, stringing him through a charade of negotiations while solidifying Russia's gains. Yet, the same day, the administration floated the idea of fresh sanctions, a financial restraint intended to squeeze Moscow's economy until someone in the Kremlin finally flinches. Picture a classic negotiations bluff. You imitate disinterest, wave the to-do list on punitive measures, and then lean back and wait for the other side to break. But what happens if the other players can tell you are bluffing? In theory, sanctions are a potent weapon. Freezing Russian banks out of SWIFT transactions, targeting energy exports that fund the war machine, then blacklisting oligarchs' yachts in European harbors. All these steps could shave billions from Kremlin's budget. But wielding sanctions is like holding a rattlesnake. Squeeze it too hard and it snaps back, hitting you in the face. Don't hold it well, too strong enough, and it weasels its way out. Europe still uses Russian gas. China stands ready to fill any gaps left in global energy supplies. Commodity prices jiggle nervously at the slightest hint of supply disruptions. And meanwhile, ordinary citizens in Europe feel the sting. Higher heating bills, pricier gasoline, and grocery aisles with more than usual empty shelf space. JD Vance hinted that Trump would walk away from talks if Moscow shows zero flexibility, but he stopped short of promising an immediate sanctions blitz. It suggests that the administration wants Russia at the table desperately, yet it hesitates to wield its most fearsome tool for fear of collateral blowback. After all, Trump's core supporters cheered on locking Russia out, but then they shrug away at any squeeze that jacks up their home heating bills. The paradox is incredibly huge. To pressure Russia, the US must demonstrate both resolve and accessibility, all while managing the optics of strength without tipping into reckless escalation. One false move and all the diplomatic bridge to Putin could collapse, leaving the world to pick through the rubble of broken promises. Putin is in power for more than 2 decades at this point, so he has seen and experienced all the tricks possible. The biggest problem is to find another way that Putin has not heard of yet, while having only a fifth of his political experience. If sanctions and tough rhetoric form one half of the diplomatic coin, the other flips into conversation itself. JD Vance hammered home a crucial point. Without direct dialogue between Russia and Ukraine, mediated by the US or any third party, the entire process remains a house of cards. Imagine refereeing a boxing match where neither fighter will enter the ring and each waits a signal that never comes back in their own dressing room. Who will win? Is it going to be a knockout, TKO or tie? And for how many rounds even the boxing match will even last? That has been the bitter reality since the breakdown of talks in Istanbul and Geneva. Moscow has very little incentive to engage on low-stakes logistical fronts, while it is busy seizing ground by force. Why discuss prisoner exchanges when you believe you can barter those very prisoners for chunks of land? The administration's strategy now hinges on crafting basic ground rules, agreeing on who, what, where and when of meetings. This may give jumpstart to humanitarian corridors, demining operations and safe passage protocols for civilians, rather than just diving straight into ceaseless debates over frozen asset releases or border adjustments. Small steps enforce trust. A handshake on a prisoner swap builds momentum. A joint statement on mine clearance sparks hope. And yet, skeptics warn that Russia will only show up if it smells tangible gains, actual gains. In other words, the US must persuade Moscow that the benefits of structured talks outweigh the spoils of unilateral conquest. So now enters the level 2 diplomacy. Informal back-channel conversations through think tanks, academic intermediaries, and retired diplomats. These exchanges can break deadlocks, planting seeds of compromise away from the glare of media spotlights. But without proper, formal, ministerial-level follow-ups, such actions risk dying before they can produce any meaningful results. The danger is very clear. Russia runs parallel negotiations with Turkey, China or other smaller European states, ensuring it never feels hostage to Western-led processes. So what can be the path forward then? First of all, the US and its allies have to build unwavering trust, brick by brick, step by step. Start with roundtable discussions on disarmament protocols, then scale to working groups talking about post-war reconstruction funds. Then also needing to maintain that transparency through third-party observers, ideally under the United Nations or the Organization for Security and Cooperation of Europe. Enforce an accountability. If you miss a deadline, then you lose a tranche of aid. And only then these mechanisms may sound bureaucratic, but they represent the only solid ground on which to build the shaky bridge of negotiations. Anything less risks burning the already fragile remains of diplomatic goodwill. While Washington and Moscow haggle over concessions and ground rules, Europe observes the blend of impatience and moral outrage. JD Vance made a point of reaffirming the civilizational theme shared by the US and its NATO allies, but the room still crackled with unease. Many delegates carried fresh memories of Vance's February performance in Munich, where he accused European elites of trampling elections and ignoring the will of the people. This time, he offered olive branches by proclaiming NATO's unity and praising the European sanctions regime. But his softer tone could not entirely mask the lingering distrust. Eastern flank countries like Poland and the Baltic states watched every word with hawk-eyed vigilance. They remember well the Soviet times and fear any compromise that could weaken their security umbrella. For them, Ukraine is not a distant conflict but a dangerous echo of history. And meanwhile, Berlin and Paris bring their own problems to the table, such as, once again, energy shortages, refugee flows, and far-right populists stirring fears among working-class voters. Germany's new Chancellor Friedrich Merz even bristled at casual US criticism of his domestic decisions, prompting the headlines decrying American interference. French leaders worry about strategic autonomy, fearing reliance on the United States security guarantees that could evaporate with the next administration change in the White House. And what of the moral dimension? For countless Ukrainians, this is not a geopolitical chess match, but a very real fight for survival. Each village shelled, each child orphaned, each apartment block reduced to rubble is a testament to the human cost of Putin's invasion. Treating attacker and defender as equal negotiating partners strikes many as a betrayal of basic decency. Yet when Europe's own capitals tremble at the possibility of higher gas bills or surges on migrant arrivals, their internal problems can very well become the priority. So the main questions, unfortunately for now, remain primarily unanswered. How far will the US go in permitting territorial compromises? What security guarantees can be offered if Ukraine is barred from NATO? And more importantly, who will underwrite the costs, which is be it financial, material and human, if any deal is to take place? These are not just abstract problems, these are burning issues that will shape the region's stability for decades to come. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support my work, there are links down below. For example, you can donate through PayPal. The links are down below once again. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.